Something that you're saying there, though, I think is really, really important for folks to remember. And it's something that I've run into in my career over and over and over again, which is software engineering are knowledge workers. They are not laborers. And many organizations and operations and people management do not realize that software engineers and people building and designing these systems should not be managed the same way as, a laborer. And I'll give you an example. Like, so many people are like, they're measuring whether butts are in seats, right? I want a butt in a seat from 9 to 5, right? And that's not how you measure value. You don't measure value from someone sitting in a seat, right?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Leaders in Tech, where we're interviewing people in technology that are making a difference with the companies they lead, or the development team they lead, or the infrastructure teams they lead. We have with us Jonathan Cook today. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, David. Super happy to be here and talk with you. I've been a fan of your podcast for some time.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. It's good to know that people actually care, because we do this, out of love for the industry. And sometimes I wonder, okay, what are we getting out of it?
What I love about your podcast is it's not just tech. It's also about why you're doing it and personal growth. And there's a lot of aspects. It's very rich. So I really, really enjoy your podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by ISU Corp. Are you having trouble with your software projects? Is there a project that's taking too long, or a technology you can't handle? We can help. We are ISU Corp, experts in custom software since 2005. With almost 20 years of experience, we can solve any technical problem, from new businesses to satellite software. We've done it all. Let us turn your ideas into reality. Learn more about how we can help by visiting us at www.isucorp.ca. Your solution starts here.
Thank you, Jonathan. The reason why I opened the podcast was because of that. I was trying to look for technology podcasts, and most of them are very technology focused. And I wanted to focus on the leadership part too, not only technology.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it rich, right?
Sure.
Jonathan, for the audience, can you give me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Sure. My name is Jonathan Cook. I'm a chief technology officer. I've been a technologist for about 30 years, in healthcare tech specifically for about over 20 years. I live all over. That may sound strange. My current home is the Sonoran Desert, right outside of Scottsdale, Arizona. So I'm surrounded by cacti and sunshine every day. For anyone that knows me from the past knows I always wear black all the time, but in the desert, you'll burst into flames. So I'm wearing white.
So white is better for the sun?
Yes, much better for the sun.
You have a very interesting painting behind you. Can you talk about that?
Oh, sure. So the painting behind me is a painting by an artist out of Pittsburgh named Adam Rousseau. And he based the painting off of the movie The Lighthouse, which stars William Dafoe. And he did a series of paintings. And I grew up loving graffiti art. My mom was a photographer of graffiti art for a long time. And he did a graffiti style painting of that movie. And I was lucky enough to get a copy from him.
That's awesome. So Jonathan, tell me, what takes your time during your workday? What do you, let's say you're bringing your son to work for a day, bring your children to work for a day. What would they see? How do you spend your days?
Sure. I think the first thing that anyone coming to work with me, particularly a younger person, would be surprised is that we're not sitting there writing code all day. Most of our day, at least my day as a leader in technology, is negotiating, understanding the core business or what the business needs, and trying to figure out how to negotiate the value they're going after with what does the technology team need to be able to do in order to drive value. I was thinking about some of the recent discussions, particularly around AI, and I spent a lot of time de-hyping things, we'll say, meaning someone reads something on an airplane or someone talks about something and like, I want that. Let's install it. Let's do it. And you have to, as a technologist, look at what they're asking for, see how it aligns with the business, and see where they're going to get value. Because there's plenty of hype and smoke and mirrors in the industry.
I can imagine for sure. That happens all the time, especially when the media starts talking heavily about this trend, right? It's always a trend and comes in and comes out, right? Nobody's talking about NFTs anymore, for example.
Well, they come and go. Oh, they come and go. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when people thought they needed a customer relationship management system. So I need a CRM. And they literally thought to put a CRM into an enterprise, you put a disk into a computer, push a button, and you have a CRM. They forget about getting thousands of workers to agree to use it and how to use it, and what are your standards, and how do you make sure you have quality data in that, right? So you watch trends come and go. We watched, as the idea of having a online registry in, with cryptocurrency being able to use in healthcare, that came and went. But at the same time, as I mentioned, AI, like I'm very, very bullish on AI. I think we're at the point AI is real, but I still think there's a lot of hype in the market around AI. And I spent a lot of part of my day trying to understand what is real, what is not, what is usable, what is not.
So the main line of business, what do you guys focus on more? Like, how do you add value to the world?
Yeah. So ClearSense, the way that the company evolved was around active archiving. So let me explain that. So we are specifically focused on healthcare data. And the way that we kind of pitch it is that we take legacy data that's a mess across a healthcare network, and we make it and turn it into modern intelligence. And what that really means is that we're a data enablement platform, allowing them to shut down legacy applications that they're barely using anymore, or sometimes there's zombie applications, which I'm happy to talk about zombie applications, that, are barely being used, but they're paying high licensing costs. They have data trapped in them they can barely access, and they have security risk because they're not being updated, right? And what we do is we help pull the data out of that, put it into our data enablement platform, and then make it accessible for data access, be it request for information all the way down to analytics or AI.
You probably have one of the toughest jobs in the market, because I've seen those data sets and they're horrible.
What's funny is I worked in population health for probably 12 years, and we were pulling data out of electronic healthcare record systems, which is hard, by the way. And anyone that tells you different, they're lying. It is hard. And I'm doing it now across legacy systems in these enterprises. And the EHRs are some of the easiest ones that we do. We're pulling data out of very, very old legacy systems, months databases, old proprietary file systems. So, but we've built the intelligence in-house with our developers to be able to do that.
That's great. Yeah, data transformation services is being feeding. So I have a custom software consulting firm, and a lot of our projects include moving the data from old storage facilities to the newer systems, and it's a pain, but it it fits us, right?
It pays the bills, right?
It pays the bills. Yeah. So then, let's go back in time. Let's see how did you get to be in such an important position? Where were you at university? What did you go to university, or what did you do in school?
Let's start before that. Let's go back to the beginning of time. So when I became interested in making machines make decisions, computers, when I was in 3rd and 4th grade. So
Really?
I started programming computers when I was in 3rd and 4th grade. This is back when Apple II was out, the TI-99, the various versions of the Commodores, right? And this is back, for any listeners, this will date me, obviously. We were storing our programs on cassette tapes, right? So
Amazing.
yeah. So I learned to make computers do things very, very young. And I got very interested into creating games. And oddly enough, I didn't go in the gaming direction, which in one sense, I kind of wish I had, because it was so early in the industry. Maybe you'd be talking to the head of Rockstar Games now instead. But I I learned that very young. And then I went into music, and my mom was very, very supportive of the arts. And, you had to be able to paint or draw. You had to be able to play a musical instrument. And I went in the art direction while continuing to do computers. And my two loves crossed while I was in college, where this thing called the information highway was coming out. And the idea of taking music and streaming it over this information highway, and the problems of trying to do that is really where my two loves crossed. And to really get to the point of your question, I did a project. I had my own consulting company very young, and I did a project for a studio where I took a bunch of samples of music that they had actually recorded of musicians. I digitized it. I put it on the internet. This is before YouTube. And I put it on the internet, made it streaming, and a fellow, a member of the family came to me. He was a professional computer engineer for a large company. He said, "Wow, that's amazing. We've been trying to figure out how you did that." And I explained how I did it. And he said, "What did you charge for that?" And I said, "I just traded a couple of hours of studio time." And he said, "Well, what was that worth?" And I go, "Like $300. He goes, "Do you understand what you did was worth about $60,000? And I said, I had no idea. I had no idea. So from that moment on, I kind of shifted in, and I realized that I had the capability of bringing value in computers. And then I went through, I did the CIO program through Carnegie Mellon. I also got a degree from the University of Pittsburgh, but my degree at University of Pittsburgh, to be very transparent, is in nonfiction writing. And I jokingly say, but it's only half a joke, the greatest computer course I ever had in my entire life was immersion journalism. So through immersion journalism, you have to put yourself in the trench of whatever you're trying to understand, and understand it well enough to be able to write about it so that a person who's not an expert can actually understand it. And I jokingly say that's the best requirements course I ever took in my entire life, right?
Thanks.
Yeah, so I think it's funny. My professor who actually taught the courses, I ended up taking many courses and becoming a friend with him. And I said, "You really should write a software engineering book." And he always laughed about that. So these University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, and then I've always been a nerd in reading. When I was younger, before I had to wear glasses, I would force myself to read 40 books a year minimum. So I was reading. Yeah, or books a year. So 52 weeks in a year. I gave myself a couple of weeks off. Yeah.
I'm doing that with the Bible, though. I read hundreds of books before, so I'm a born again Christian, but it was kind of lost. I lost my faith, and the Lord brought me back 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I probably read hundreds and hundreds of business technology books, religion books, esoteric, stuff from like Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism. I went through all this stuff. And I, when I back to my faith, I'm like, I haven't read the Bible. So, I'm in this journey, like, I want to read the Bible 3 times this year. And it's incredible because you read that book, every time you read it, you get something better out of it, which is like, by now I've read I think I've done it like 3-4 times already.
Yeah.
And every time I go past through the same passage, something else shows up. It's like a book that always keeps on changing,
Yeah, I grew up in a very religious family, and I started reading the scripture when I probably was in 2nd grade, which is incredibly hard. If you're reading King James Version, that's really hard to read, right?
That's very hard.
I went to the library once and I saw a kid's version, and I was like, "Oh, I can understand this." Yeah, this "thy" and "thou" I don't understand, right? So,
So, Jonathan, do you keep reading books, or that part of your life is over with?
I've slowed down. Once I didn't realize that I needed glasses for some time, and I realized that my reading was getting slower and I was getting headaches. And then once I got a proper prescription, getting old is rough, right? I realized I needed glasses. I slowed down. I still read. A lot of it's online versus reading the actual book in hand at night. So. But I try to keep up to date. My technology teams always joke that I've read the white paper before they have.
What I do nowadays is that I have an Audible subscription, and I just listen to audiobooks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I go for a jog or, when I'm working out, I'm listening, right?
Yeah, I love listening to Audible, particularly driving. It's so relaxing, and without distraction, I can really focus on the book. Yeah.
For sure. Jonathan, what was your first job as a software engineer? Or in your career, right?
Yeah. So my first money paying job was me doing it myself as my own consulting company. Just kind of by accident, realizing I could do it, like I said earlier. But being hired by an organization, coming in, I did a number of gigs for some small companies. I did a lot back in the .com era. I did a bunch of websites for some large organizations. I have NDAs. I can't say who, but I worked for, we'll just say some banks that you might have heard of. And outside of that, my first real title job probably was the National Committee for Quality Assurance, where they hired me. It's kind of a funny story. They hired me, and I said explicitly, I'm a coding cowboy. I can code all day long, but I don't want to manage people. I don't want any direct reports. And they said, fine. And then I think it was within 6 months, half or 2/3 of the department was reporting to me. I woke up one day and said, how did I lose this bet? But it really opened me up to another side of, not only management, but leadership leadership is, how do you persuade ethically to get people to believe in what you're doing and to move in the direction you want to move? And it became a new set of challenges, which, by the way, caused me to start reading other books. So, the National Committee for Quality Assurance, if you're not familiar with them, fantastic organization out of Washington, D.C. It's the gold standard of healthcare metrics. Peggy O'Kane, who started it, one of the most intelligent, hardworking persons in healthcare. She early on realized that healthcare organizations did not have metrics, so you couldn't tell if one health plan was better than the other. And she wanted to develop a way to do that. And not only did I love working for her, I believed in the mission very much. So working there was my first real foray into being a technology leader. And I worked there for probably 13, 14 years, a number of different jobs. And the beauty of it was I worked all over the United States because we were supporting the US government. We were supporting Medicare, Medicaid. We were supporting state-run government programs. We were doing consulting gigs. So any given day, I could be talking to the state of California. I could be talking to CMS out of Washington, D.C., or I could be talking to a group of providers out of the Midwest. So it really was a great learning ground in healthcare for me.
And that launched you as a true leader in technology, which is fantastic, right?
Yep.
Now, what happened? How long were you an independent contractor?
Independent contractor. I mean, I was an independent contractor while I worked at the National Committee for Quality Assurance as well. They allowed me to keep my company.
That's awesome.
They did. And I said I would ramp it down. And then at some point, there's only so many hours in a day. And I had to make a decision. And, but as an independent contractor, probably 8 or 10 years, with the overlap into NCQA, I was doing gigs. And then I always did gigs on the side as well for PE firms doing diligence. Anytime anyone that I knew wanted to do diligence, I would help out with diligence for a nominal fee.
That's amazing. So basically your consulting career got you into the first job of your dream, right?
It did. I mean, I looked at a number of jobs and none of them were written the way I wanted to work. I didn't want to just sit and do one thing. And I didn't want to sit and just create web applications. I didn't want to sit and just work on the back end of a database. I didn't want to just talk to a client, get requirements and hand them off to a software engineer. I wanted to be involved with the whole project lifecycle. And jokingly, I was talking to an executive, years later, and he said, well, you wanted to be a producer. Didn't you come from music? And I said, yeah, I had a lot of time. Half of my life was also music as well. And I was like, yeah, it's funny you should say that. I kind of wanted to be the tech producer. And so I couldn't find a job that really matched what I wanted. And I invented it, and I created the position, and I created, the company. And, positive thought, hard work manifests many things, right? So
That's fantastic. In my case, it was kind of the opposite. I got, so as soon as I finished college, I opened my first tech company and it went bust in 2 years. So
Yeah.
thank God I actually could sell it for the amount of debt that I had. So it was fantastic. But then I got a real job as a programmer that grew into leadership in technology. And I lasted 10 years, but I realized that every 2 years I was changing jobs.
Yeah.
So I will go to a job, optimize, manage, delegate, and work myself out of the job, and I will be completely bored.
Yeah.
So I will go myself and get another job and a pay raise and a higher, like, higher responsibility. And after 10 years, I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. Like, why am I jumping from job to job? And then I realized, because I'm getting bored. So that's when I got the idea. Why don't I open a company where I have multiple clients? So I'm never bored. And that wasn't a very small idea either, because after I made the decision 3-4 years later, I was burning out, man. Like, it was.
For sure. Yeah, it's an interesting position to be running your own company. Particularly, if you're working, you're generating money, and if you're not working, hopefully someone else is generating money. So yeah.
I don't remember how many times I have told my team, this month, if we all just sat at our living rooms and watched Netflix and ate potato chips, would have been more money than going to work every day. We lose money that way.
Yeah. Funny. Yeah.
The only what changed really, and that's also why I'm passionate about this podcast, is when I truly became a leader in technology. I remember by the end of 2012, after more than 10 years in business, I realized that something was wrong. And that wrong was me. I didn't know how to lead a team. I didn't know how to delegate. I didn't know how to set up the proper culture. So thank God I found this association that gave a 1-year course on leadership for technologists.
Yeah.
It's called SIM, a Society for Information Management. So I took that course, and they really taught me how to become a proper CIO, a proper leader. And after I took that year off in 2014, I came back and started implementing that. And my company finally took off. And I started to delegate, and my stress level went down. My people were happier.
Yeah.
And they never looked back.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a book I read early on, probably midway. I wish I'd read it very early, by Andy Grove. And Andy Grove was behind Intel. And Andy in the book talks about leadership, and in the leadership, he creates a side story about trying to open a breakfast restaurant, right? And he talks about leverage and the idea that you could be great at creating breakfast, but you're only one person, right? And how do you scale that? And the art is in how do you scale, and the term is leverage, right? And once I learned the term leverage, I started understanding, because early on, like I told you, my first ask to become a leader, I didn't want to be a leader. I was a coding cowboy. I was very good at coding. I could code as well as anyone I knew, and I was very fast. But I am one body, one person, right? And you think about, one soldier is not going to take the hill. You need multiple soldiers, right? Or whatever analogy you want to use. And when I read Andy's book, it really solidified the idea of leverage. How do you take what you know and get other people to be able to believe in it, follow it, and then lead it at volume and at scale. And that in itself is where you really drive more value. This idea that you're really good and you can do one thing, or you can do multiple things really well, that's great. That's an army of one. How do you lead an army of hundreds or thousands, right?
Yeah, and that's where the inspiration comes in, what the leader in technology, what I found out is that you set the vision for the team.
Sure.
And you say, we shall go this way because of this and these reasons. And this is because, our values are in place. And then people start really following that vision.
Yeah.
It's crazy because, talking about the Bible, it says that without a vision, the people perish.
Yeah.
So you have to set the vision, right? In your case, after that 14-year career at that job, what did you do next?
Sure. While I was there, I was put in a very unique position. I was working with a very fantastic medical doctor named Dr. Michael Barr. And Michael and I were put on a project to look at the feasibility of pulling data out of electronic healthcare record systems across the United States, which at the time was considered either easy or hard, depending on who you talk to. The reality is it was hard. And one of the problems with it was to use it for any kind of measurement to understand what's happening in healthcare. The providers didn't trust the data. So Michael and I were put on a project of talking to provider networks, large clinically integrated networks around the United States in order to understand, are you getting data or are you not getting data? And along the way, I got to meet a lot of the vendors. And the beauty of that was I was the National Committee for Quality Assurance. So I was not a threat. I was not a vendor that was going to actually compete against them, which meant they quite often would open their kimono to me and let me see what they were doing or explain the reality. And along the way, I met a company that was becoming a software company that had been previously a consulting company named Arcadia. And Arcadia was just starting to emerge into population health. And I saw what they're doing. They had just acquired a EHR optimization company. And I jokingly said to them, if you want to become a software company, give me a call. And they gave me a call and we talked and I joined them. And the original team at Arcadia, I can't say enough about them. Some of the smartest people I've ever worked with. Michael Gleason, who was the person who was the visionary around the product, absolutely brilliant. Michael Mucci, one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. He's the current CEO of the company. Nick Stepro, one of the hardest working wonder child inventors, designers. And he started very young and he's no longer a child. So I don't mean that. Wrong on Nick. Nick is absolutely amazing. Getting the work in that team was like getting the work with a super group. And we took Arcadia and turned it into a software company. And it's one of the top population health companies out there right now. And we worked there, turning it to the cloud, building out platforms, building out products, and taking the market. And I can't go into the details without being disparaging of other companies, but I'm very proud of what we did at Arcadia, particularly with that team.
Jonathan, it takes a lot to do that. Congratulations. I actually, through my company, we were hired to build a video game out of all things for this company that was expert. They were expert in warehousing and factory development in China. But they had a big presence in Canada and the USA. I mean, the company was Canadian. And these guys invented a video game. To give you a background, they have this idea of, these guys invented the teddy bear without disclosing the name. The grandfather invented the teddy bear. And so they have a lot of, they import gifts from China, or some of the first factories built in China that imported goods from to USA and Canada. And the first 10 years of the 2000s, they decided to create a game that will actually join the teddy bear, the physical teddy bear, with a video game online. So they hired these kids, and it was just a trial. And that trial became a $700 million deal. It became very popular. So when they hired us, they had this horrible monster of a thing done with Flash and horrible backend technology. They needed thousands of servers to support this, and it was breaking apart. So they hired the Flash.
Did you see?
Yeah.
Did you see? Wow.
Wow. Yeah. It's very old, right?
Yeah.
So we were in, and we upgraded them to Unity 3D when Unity 3D was nothing. And I never worked on video games before in my life, but as a good leader, I knew how to hire the right people. But the company had the potential to become a software company through this video game that was very popular already.
Yeah.
But we couldn't change the culture. We couldn't. I stayed there for 2 years, like as a consultant with my consulting firm. The company grew 10x because of that project specifically. And I tell you, you said that you probably will be the leader of the rockstar video game company right now. Thank God that didn't happen to you, Jonathan. I got a glimpse into that industry, and it's probably the worst, hardest, backstabbing, industry in software that you can imagine.
Well, I guess
Vulnerable.
well, I mean, to your point, I mean, what's the old adage? Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Jonathan, when I got there, they were treating the software developers like they were warehouse, uh, you know, warehouse people.
Yeah.
And they actually empty a warehouse, and they put 100 developers there to build this thing. No wonder it was failing, right? When we got there, they ate 90% of the budget, and it was 10% done of the new build.
Right.
Well, the first thing we ask is, okay, let's change the environment. Let's have windows, windows at the building, right? Inspire the people, right?
Right.
But the overall industry it's hard. Like, the average to make a video game is about 2 years to build a game from scratch. But the coders, they work 13, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
And the closer you get to the Leyland, the worse it gets, like
In the compression. Sure. Yeah.
right?
So the last 20% of the project takes 80% of the effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? And also trying to manage artists with sound engineers, with software engineers, with database engineers, with security engineers.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare because they don't think the same way, right?
Yeah, that's juggling chainsaws at that point. Yeah.
So,
I think
so we're not gonna make it happen.
something that you're saying there, though, I think is really, really important for folks to remember. And it's something that I've run into in my career over and over and over again, which is software engineering are knowledge workers. They are not laborers. And many organizations and operations and people management do not realize that software engineers and people building and designing these systems should not be managed the same way as, a laborer. And then I'll give you an example. Like, so many people are like, they're measuring whether butts are in seats, right? I want a butt in a seat from 9 to 5, right? And that's not how you measure value. You don't measure value from someone sitting in a seat, right? You measure value by what output they've created, right? And what their contribution has been. And it's funny that you still see that even today, right? Is that people want to, manage them like they're digging a footer for a house, right? It's very, very different. So I can't stress that enough, is that you have to understand the type of worker you have, the type of environment that you need in order to make them productive, inspired, and ultimately to let them get you where you need to go. Right.
Yeah, for sure. And that will impact the outcome, what we're going to get out of the team, right?
Sure.
As long as we change the environment, I realized it wasn't a talent issue. It was, in this case, it was a cultural issue.
Yeah.
And as soon as we were given the ability to change that, everything started to prosper, right? Until we finish the game. It's how do you do it though? Like, this is my point. Like, you came and you asked these guys, you want to turn your company into a software company. It's a completely different mindset. Like, I know they can say like your lead were very good, but
in the case of Arcadia, that was all pretty well established. They had a good vision of what they wanted to do. They just needed someone to help with the technical expertise to make sure that they were headed in the right direction, and how to hire the right talent and to manage all of that. In the case of a previous experience, it was very, very different. I was hired in the, very typical situation. Application extremely brittle, a deadline that was time boxed from the beginning without any analysis, and a team that only knew one software language, and you did not need that language to pull the project off, right? So, I've been in that situation too. And at that point, you're figuring out, okay, what do I need to do here? And like, one of the things that I learned early on is that all my staff have heard this over the years, is most organizations are not given unlimited funding, right? It's very, very rare that you get that. So I talk in terms of, I jokingly say, guerrilla warfare, right? What is the bare minimum that we need in order to be able to pull this off? And everyone might have to wear different hats at different times in order to be able to pull this off. But the beauty of that is it gives you flexibility to learn and understand other parts of the business. And I've seen some of the most productive and gelled teams come out of that concept of giving them the authority and saying, this is what we have. It's kind of like the scene from Apollo 13 where, they put the box on the table and they say, we got to get the astronauts back. And this is all they have. Everything in this box, figure it out, right? It's not unlimited resources. And, my experience with that is if you give the right team the authority and the autonomy, they can usually get you to the right spot. But back to your point, if you gave them the right vision, you got to make sure that you have the right vision, aligned for them.
That's beautiful. It's been almost 40 minutes. It's been 38 minutes already.
Sure.
And the podcast is getting better and better, but I want to respect your time, Jonathan.
Sure.
One question that I wanted to ask you, what has been the hardest, toughest time in your career? And how did you pull out of it?
Sure. I think it was what I was alluding to. When you inherit a legacy system that's been overpromised, staff that is lacking the skills, and you have a time box deliverable, you're handed a very challenging problem. You can run from it, or you can put your arms around it and try to understand it. And, in that case, the first thing that I did is I wanted to make sure I understood what the true value and the true deliverables were. Something I learned very, very early on is there's always an option to do nothing. That's always an option, right? And sometimes that's a valuable option, meaning don't do everything that everything's being asked for. Make sure that you understand what's being asked for, what the return on investment of every one of the things being asked for is. So that's the first thing I did in that case is I went in and I said, let's break this whole thing down. Where's our highest return on investment? Okay, we've got that prioritized. And to many that build systems, we know that you prioritize your features, your functions, your components, your requirements. But in this case, it was not done. And as we did that, we started seeing that the project was not quite as big as they originally thought it was. Now, the marketing brochure made it look huge, obviously. So I had to do that, but then I had to go to the staff and I had to figure out how to get this staff to work on a different technology. And what I did, because I didn't have any time to hire new folks, because if I hired new people, let's say I went out and hired a bunch of aces and I brought them in, they don't know the business domain. I was going to spend 90 plus days teaching them the business domain. That doesn't work. These people knew the business domain and they had computer skills, but they did not have the exact skills we needed. So what I did is I built out a learning cooperative where we actually at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock twice a week, I was teaching them the new technologies and we were testing it, and they had a choice to join or not. It was not required, but they also knew that this gave them an opportunity to learn new technology. It knew that their jobs were secure and they knew that they were helping the organization. So we ran that, and in the end, there's a lot more details to this, but in the end, we delivered it, and we delivered it on time, and we delivered it under budget, which was great. So that was one of the hardest things that I ever run into. Now, having said that, unfortunately, I've run into that scenario more than once in my career, where you walk in and there's some legacy system that someone has promised something on, right?
Jonathan, one point that you made that everyone that is listening must remember: if you have coders working for you, make sure you teach them not to fall in love with the language they are using.
Absolutely.
Because it happens all the time. It happened to me when I was a coder. I was doing Object Pascal with Delphi, and I thought, it was the best thing in the world, which it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then, C# came in, and I didn't want to move until I was forced to move. And then I realized how stupid I was. Computer languages are just tools. And you don't use the hammer to screw a nail, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I was asked a number of years ago, what software languages do you know how to write in? And I said, I don't know, maybe 12. And they were amazed. And I said, well, I've been doing this for a long time, and you picked the right tool for whatever you're doing. And this idea that I learn one language and that's all I know, that's why I call my team developers and not programmers, right? We develop and we make these dumb machines do very, very hard things, right?
That's fantastic. Jonathan, what's in the future for you?
Well, we're working here at ClearSense, and I'm super excited about it because, like we've talked, I've been in healthcare for over 20 some years, and at ClearSense is the first time ever in my entire career that the return on investment is undeniable. The idea that you're paying X amount for these systems and you're barely using them, and then you pay pennies on the dollar to us to actually archive them. And make the data accessible and then available. I'm super excited about, because it's also not only is it helping out healthcare organizations, which frankly need help, and particularly without getting into politics with all, the tariffs and all the things that are happening, all the change in government funding. There's a lot of pressure on the healthcare industry right now, and we can help reduce cost. But the other thing that we do is, by doing this, is we lay a nice foundation for those that want to explore building out their AI strategy. So just think about this for a second. If you have 15 years worth of applications, hundreds of applications, and we pull all the data out, we make it accessible to you, and then we put it in a layer that is available for AI training or AI reading. This could be augmentation, this could be MCP, whatever you want to do, it's there. So it's kind of a multi-pronged weapon, so to speak, is what we're offering. And again, I'm very excited with what we're doing in the active archiving space. And keep your eyes open on what's going to be coming out of ClearSense.
That's fantastic. Jonathan, one last question and then we'll let you go.
Sure.
And you probably know the answer if you listened to this podcast before. If you have access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
I jokingly call this the Tim Ferriss question, because the first time I ever heard it was Tim Ferriss used to use it. I know he stole it somewhere too, but and I'm a huge Tim Ferriss fan. So last year I was very interested in learning more about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I just found him an interesting person, and I wasn't sure if I would like him or not. And I mean, obviously he's great in his movies, Terminator, classic movie. And I decided to listen to his book. And there was a phrase his father said to him and that he took on in his life that I just think is so perfect with quite often how I think, which is be useful. And I think my billboard would be something along the lines of be useful, do less harm, rinse and repeat, right? Yeah. And I think it's very, very important not only to be useful, but also make sure we are not doing harm in any way to anyone or anything, environment, animals, whatever. And again, just every morning, wake up, rinse and repeat, be useful and do not do harm.
Jonathan, it's impossible to be neutral. If you're not being useful, you're actually harming something.
Sure.
It's true, right? Like if you're doing nothing and you say I'm neutral, well, then you're allowing society to pull you through, because you gotta get fed and you gotta get housed.
Sure.
And that's the problem. But right now we live in a society that they think they deserve everything without doing anything. And the more we grow into this Western culture, if we grow this way, if more people are harmful than being useful, that's when you have a society collapse. Right?
Yeah.
So this comes freshly in time. We have to all be useful and add value to society, right?
Sure. Totally agree.
Jonathan, thank you so much. If people like to follow you, are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn or through the ClearSense website. Hey, David, this was a blast, and I'm so glad I finally got to do this with you. And I hope you have a great week.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonathan. God bless. Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.